Welcome to Talking Out Your Glass. I'm Sean Wagoner. Cedric Mitchell is a multidisciplinary designer, glass artist, and cultural tastemaker, successfully combining elements including craft, utility, and visual culture. His work is rooted in handmaking but reaches beyond any single medium. He designs objects that carry energy, emotion, and intention, pieces meant to live with people. Says Mitchell, "My design language is what I call modern funk. It is defined by bold color, playful geometry, and confident forms balanced by structure and refinement. I draw inspiration from music, movement, architecture, and everyday rituals. Whether I am working on lighting, furniture, or collectible objects, my goal remains the same, to create work that feels alive, expressive, and deeply human." End quote. Cedric Mitchell Design is not just a studio, it is a platform for craft-driven innovation across categories where functional objects, sculptural works, and cultural storytelling coexist. This year is shaping up to be a big one for Mitchell, who recently launched a new body of work through JOOPITER, further pushing his practice into collectible design. Alongside that, he continues to develop new lighting and furniture pieces, leaning more into sculptural, functional objects, and expanding his modern funk language across materials. In October, Mitchell will be showing work at ComplexCon, a large-scale cultural festival that showcases design, fashion, music, and streetwear. He chose to present work in that context because, as he states, "My practice has always been about bridging craft with contemporary culture. It's an opportunity to place hand-blown glass and collectible design in front of a broader audience that doesn't typically encounter it in traditional gallery settings." End quote. Originally from Oklahoma, where he first encountered studio glass while recording at a Tulsa music studio, Mitchell learned glassblowing at Tulsa Glassblowing School, where he eventually became an apprentice and an instructor. Now based in Los Angeles, he has developed glassware collections, collaborated with high-profile clients such as Nike, and served as events and resource manager at Crafting the Future, an organization that supports BIPOC craft artists. Mitchell's kinetic glasses, which swivel on a glass ball, were featured on the cover of summer 2024 issue of American Craft. During his 2023 residency at the studio of the Corning Museum of Glass, Mitchell successfully explored many different hot shop techniques for creating patterns paired with color theory research. He delved into chromatherapy theory, and his extensive experimentation yielded unique color combinations in both transparent and opaque glasses. The artist has also completed residencies at Penland School of Craft and the Pilchuck Glass School. He developed Cedric Mitchell Design in 2018, where he creates blown glass for retailers nationwide, and is currently developing an eclectic line of lighting. Mitchell taught at Tulsa Glassblowing School in June and will be teaching at Haystack Mountain School of Crafts in July 2026. On the studio side, Mitchell continues to grow his direct-to-consumer work with glassware collections like Kinetic Glass and Chromastack, while building towards larger-scale projects and brand collaborations. He says, "This year is really about refining the vision and positioning the work at the intersection of craft, design, and culture." Many thanks to the sponsors of this episode of Talking Out Your Glass. His Glassworks Incorporated, Wet Dog Glass, the Chrysler Museum Perry Glass Studio, Hot Glass Color and Supply, Pittsburgh Glass Center, and the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass. To find out more about our sponsors, visit talkingoutyourglass.com, click on Episodes Season 11, and Cedric Mitchell. Also, many thanks to the Corning Museum of Glass for the process video of Cedric Mitchell. Cedric Mitchell, thank you so much for joining me on Talking Out Your Glass podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
You began your career in the arts as a local hip-hop artist in Tulsa, Oklahoma called Nuff Said. Musically, what were your goals for self-expression at that time?
I started out as a local hip-hop artist in Tulsa. And, ideally, when I first started doing music, I wanted to be like a DJ and then a producer. And then I realized that that wasn't my calling. I was much more inclined to put words together. So my friend, he actually took over the production side of it, and I handled the lyrics, and we just, started making music together and just like getting ideas out creatively.
Can you give us a sample?
All of those songs are on SoundCloud at Nuff Said 918.
So you don't want
But
to do it live.
yeah, I retired that when I started blowing glass, so I
Okay.
haven't made any music in about 14 years.
Your early education in the arts is diverse and includes fashion, painting, printmaking, and woodworking. You discovered glass blowing through a friend at Tulsa Glassblowing School. You signed up for a class but erroneously thought you'd be making pipes. Why'd you stick with it?
I stuck with it because it was different. It was something that was actually difficult to do at the time. And alongside with me learning to blow glass, I was actually training with my brother who trains MMA fighters and boxers. So I found similarities in the two because we used to train in the gym and it was like 86 degrees. And it was a lot of mental toughness that went on with the training. So I found that those two things went hand in hand, and like treating it like chess, like you have to think a few moves ahead. And, you know, it's like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So it's similar to glass blowing, like something can happen and go left, and you have to figure out how to self correct or, fix the mistake and finish it out. So that was my thing of, why I wanted to do it. And then it was something that just anyone couldn't just walk in and just pick up immediately. So I felt the need to like challenge myself.
Around this time, you read the Paulo Coelho book, The Alchemist, which is also my husband's favorite book. How did this impact your direction in becoming a maker?
The book is super powerful in a way because I randomly picked up the book and I purchased it on the way to Hastings, Nebraska when I was viewing colleges when they're showing me that I could actually go seek a degree in glassblowing. So I started reading that on the trip to Hastings, and I found like similarities between me and Santiago when Santiago had got robbed and had to stay in Egypt, and he started working at a glass shop. So I thought that was pretty special. And also within that book, they made mention of taking heed of the omens. So, as I was reading, it just made me more inclined to like keep digging and seeing where like this path would lead. Just like Santiago did with in The Alchemist when he was trying to find his gold. And just realizing that the gold was with him the whole time. So, I thought that was a pretty powerful message at the end. Sorry to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it, but I think, the sign of the glass shop and the signal there was something to keep me pushing and following and pursuing this path.
Cedric, you're a fan of graffiti and produced an early series of glass spray paint cans. Describe and discuss those works.
Yeah, so my friends in Tulsa, they have this store. They used to have a store. I don't think they have it anymore, but it was a clothing store. And they also sold spray paint supplies. I wouldn't say graffiti supplies, but I'm a shadow artist, so I was trying to find the closest way possible to be next to it or close to it or around it. So within that, I made these spray paint cans, um, and then also discovered Ben Moore at the same time. So that was pretty powerful of discovering the bowls with the exterior fold that he made. That's how I came up with the lid for the jar, and I created it for my friends so they could stash like their caps and supplies in it, so it's actually functional too. So it was something that I wanted to do for my friends and something to push my creativity as well. So it was One of the first things I ever like pursued artistically, outside of just making like drinkware or cups or bowls, the standard things and shapes that you would learn in glass blowing.
You also made some cast glass handguns at that time.
I had my friend Nick Fruin. He spent some time in Tulsa before he got the job at Penland School of Craft. So I spent about 6 months with him, and he taught a glass casting class to us. And the first one I did was actually a spray paint can. So I did a spray paint can first, and then a glass handgun. So that was like my first introduction to like glass casting, and it's something that I really, like doing and would love to like get more involved in it and pick it up again. But it just diversifying and exploring a little bit more within glass, outside of a college setting, to where you don't have someone there walking you through all the different ways that you can utilize glass, within flat glass, casted glass, and glass blowing. So it was special to have Nick there to introduce me to glass casting.
Kenneth Gonzalez introduced you to gluing elements together to increase scale. How and when did that change your aesthetic goals for the work?
That started pretty early on, when I was in the intermediate class. I was still practicing like shape and form. So, learning from Kenneth, he was heavily involved in cold working and carving on pieces. And a lot of the pieces that he made in the past, when he was in Tennessee working for Richard Jolly, he, had these colorful pieces called celebrations that he would create and glue together using Hextol. And, I wasn't even that far along with using Hextol, so I was using UV glue to actually construct items, to stack them and, achieve scale. And just, finding joy in the fact that everything does not have to actually happen in the hot shop. You can have a little bit more room to explore and get things the way you want them, and it's a little bit slower pace, and you have a little bit more precision as well. So, that's something that I took from Kenneth and carried it forward within my work. And, even to this day, that's how I achieve a lot of my sculptural pieces.
So how and when did you discover Joe Cariotti and decide to move to LA?
That started early on. I think it was around 2014. And this was before Instagram like really started popping off. This was back when like Instagram was only for iPhone users.
Wow.
Kind of like a gated community. I wish we could go back to those days where people would just post cool things and, you know. But now it's just oversaturated. But my friend Natalie Legener is the one who introduced me to Joe Cariotti from a YouTube video. And the video was this skills video. So they were playing Young Guru and rocking gold chains and doing glass tricks. And Natalie was like, you look like you would hang out with them. So within that, I just started like commenting on the video and, you know, paying attention to what was going on Instagram and commenting on those things too. And eventually I got invited out to LA, but we actually met in 2014 at the Chicago Glass Conference when he was demoing there. So I met him and Tyler Berry there, and I actually helped with the demo there. And alongside that, I met my good friend Corey Pemberton too, who was actually helping with the demo. So it was a pretty monumental and special moment right there.
We'll return to Cedric Mitchell in just a moment. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by His Glassworks Incorporated, diamond tools and glass cold working supplies. Suppliers of diamond-plated tools and accessories, including diamond laps, wheels, belts, and adhesives. Expert advice available at hisglassworks.com. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by Wet Dog Glass. In business since 1996, Wet Dog Glass delivers unsurpassed value to glass studios like Corning Museum of Glass and others around the globe. Offerings include turnkey hot glass studio equipment, studio planning consultation, and technical support. Wet Dog Glass, your studio's best friend. For more information, visit wdg-us.com. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by the Chrysler Museum of Glass Perry Glass Studio, presenting a master class, Graphics with Jason Christian, August 3rd through 7th, 2026. This glass masterclass explores the intersection of pattern, form, and surface in contemporary glassmaking. Students will investigate ways to translate graphic and repetitive imagery onto sculptural and functional objects with an emphasis on developing a personal visual language. Through demonstrations and hands-on experimentation, participants will learn techniques for applying pattern to blown and solid forms and consider how surface interacts with volume, light, and color. The course encourages curiosity, risk-taking, and refinement of individual ideas in a supportive studio environment suitable for a range of skill levels. For more information, visit chrysler.org/event/masterclass-graphics-with-Jason. And now we return to Cedric Mitchell. Tell us a little bit about Joe. What was it about him that made you want to work with him?
I think, the thing about Joe is, the aspect of the perpetual practice. So at the time I was doing a lot of reading, hence the Alchemist book. But alongside that, I read this book called Mastery by Robert Greene. So, within that, it was just talking about, practice. And I also was studying this guy named Brian Johnson. He had this thing called Philosopher Notes, where he would give you wisdom in a short amount of time. But he talked about practice in a way that, people don't actually know how to practice. You have to actually train yourself and know how to zoom in and zoom out. So that's the similarity that I found within Joe in practicing certain forms and shapes and really mastering those techniques. And just the crisp, clean forms of the mid-century modern design aesthetic mixed with the Venetian style of glassblowing, offhand glassblowing. So that's somebody I chose as my mentor and who I wanted to learn from, so I could pick up those techniques, not just within glass but also within business too. So grateful to him.
COVID inspired you to use your LLC to create a Shopify store. For those who don't know, what is that and how did it benefit you?
Yeah, so within that, when I moved to LA, it was a transition that really, hit me, because going from someone working at a nonprofit and then moving to LA, and then I'm a contract worker working on a 1099. I didn't know that basically I was a business. So within that and studying things like being broke in LA and learning how to start my business and building business credit. So I went ahead and filed my LLC when I first moved to LA that first year, just to have it. Even though I didn't use it, I still aged the business and the LLC just to prepare myself for whatever may happen in the future. So within that, COVID happened and things got slow. And that was the signal for me to realize that, it's safer for me to just bet on myself than being dependent on anyone else for money. And I've always been like that. I never really asked for a raise or anything like that. I have 2 feet, 2 hands. I got eyes and ears. I can create things too. So I feel like I'm the master of my own destiny. So if I want something, I can create it too. So that's why I went ahead and started my Shopify store. I had a 30-day free trial, had 30 days to figure it out. I made a few things. And within that, I found this app on the Shopify platform called Suna Studios. So I had like some bowls that I made and I sent them to Suna Studios and they did the photography on them. And they shot about 140 images and you just select the ones that you wanted and you only pay $39 per image. So you have your product image. So that's how I achieved my first product images, started my Shopify, and just got it going and went from there.
When and why did Heath Ceramics reach out to you to create glass for them? And talk about that relationship.
So he reached out because I had the bowls and then I had some candles on my website as well. So with the candles, they actually transitioned into tumblers after they burned out. So, he reached out to me via a chat that I set up on my website where customers could chat with me in live time. And they wanted me to create some tumblers for their collection, their summer collection. So, I created samples for that. They provided me with the color palette, the inspiration behind the collection. So I created the tumblers and then I created a set of vases and also some bowls. So they actually picked up everything that I made in the samples. So 3 different vase styles, the bowls and tumblers. So that was my first collection with He Ceramics, and here we are 6 years later, and we've still been working together, creating 2 collections a year.
Tell us about your kinetic glass and how did your posting that on Instagram affect your professional trajectory and your Instagram itself?
Well, I mean, the funny story about that is it started as a commission for this guy who wanted some custom whiskey glasses. So I made a few whiskey glasses, and he didn't really like the vibe of those. And then I came up with the kinetic glass, which is actually based off my friend Nate Cotterman's glass, the cube glass, and the sphere glass, which I used to help him make all the time. So I was thinking, I guess outside the tumbler, you could say, just taking the sphere and taking it from inside of the tumbler and putting it on the outside and elevating it by putting gold leaf in it. And I made a sample and then just tested it out to see if it would spin. So it did. So I reached out to the guy who I did the commission for, and he liked it, but he wanted to like me to make a base for it. And then I told him it'd be an extra upcharge, and then he wasn't really for the upcharge. So I offered him a refund, and then I went from there. And then I posted it on Twitter, actually, which at the time only had like 50 people following me on Twitter. I didn't have any, like, not a large following. And I just posted them all spinning on the table and had a caption on it, said this, I created this design for someone else, but I think I'm going to keep it for myself. And then I woke up the next day and there was like 60,000 views on this like post that I made and people asking how to buy it. And at the time I was just, collecting people's orders and pushing them through QuickBooks. And I did the same thing. I sent the glasses to Suna, got the professional images, and then uploaded it as a product on my Shopify page, and we were able to take orders from there. So I think that was like one of the pinnacles of like my design aesthetic with the kinetic glass, which has become, a big seller for me.
Your first residency at the Corning Museum of Glass changed a lot for you. That's where you began to make one of a kind art objects. Talk about your pieces inspired by playground equipment and the new tool Jesse came up with to make them.
When I first approached the residency, my whole game plan was to make some compound forms. I'm a huge fan of, Pablo Soto and Devin Burgess and even like Greg Fiddler, who, they all learn from. So that's how I was approaching the residency of like making these really difficult shapes. But it was during COVID and they had this foot pedal system to actually provide the air. And it wasn't really working in my favor because I really needed someone to actually physically blow and cap so I could, utilize those things to split the forms the way I needed them. So day one went by and I struggled through that. And then I was talking to Jeff Mack about this other idea I had. And, he was like, well, let's do that. And then honestly, they announced it to the crowd that that's what I was going to start making. So I actually had to do it. And then how the conversation went with Jesse is I spent a lot of time when I first started blowing glass on YouTube. I still watch a lot of YouTube videos, but I seen Lino using this lineup tool when he was at Corning, which came from the factory there. So he used it as an encamo tool to line up some pieces, some thicker pieces. So I asked if they had that tool in-house, and they brought it out. And it worked, but it was limiting. You could only get something so tall. You can only stack so many forms on it before, it was done. So I had an idea of like something that we could move and stack and make things taller. So Jesse had disappeared for like an hour or two and then came back with this new lineup tool. So we put bench rollers on the bench and then we had this new lineup tool and we tested it out. And it took us about a day to dial it in, and then we were making these totem stacks, which, they really resembled playground equipment and totems as well, but highly inspired by Editori Sotas in the Memphis Design Group.
How and why did you begin working with Dante Marioni, and how has he influenced you?
I mean, Dante was early influence, going back to me watching YouTube videos. I watched those Dick and Dante videos like over and over, just studying the game. I've always approached glass blowing like sports. Like you have to study film and watch film to pick it up, even if you're not in the hot shop. So it's all about the retention of the knowledge and, how to execute it when you get in the shop. So I would always watch, videos over and over. So Dante was a huge inspiration when it came to like color and diversity, skills. So in just clean forms as well, and someone who approached art differently, taking those designs and the knowledge that he learned from Lino. So I feel like, coming from that family tree of someone who learned from Lino and had a close relationship with Lino, was someone who I was highly inspired by. And I had the opportunity to be a gaffer in residence at Pilchuck Glass School. And it was supposed to happen early on, and then COVID happened, and it got pushed back a year, which I was grateful for. So it gave me time to like build up my skill as well. And the relationship just grew when we were gaffers in residence. He asked me 2 questions beforehand. He asked me if I know how to, do reticello, and I was like, no. And he was like, what about goblets? And I was like, nope. And he was like, damn, we're screwed. And then I was like, nah, we got this. I was like, anything else, I can definitely achieve. So the relationship grew. We kind of tag team it, I pulled all the cane. He'd set up the reticello, I'll stuff it, and we'll make it. And then if it's something that was a goblet or anything of that nature, he would take over that. So we just tag team it. And then, we hung out after that session at Pilchuck. And every time I visit Seattle, that's where I stay, spend time with. And it's great to have someone as a friend and mentor, who also, admires my work.
So, what were the goals of your Hustle Glass tour of 2023?
That was just, it came organically. It's like, it came to a point where I was doing a lot of residencies and a lot of teaching, which I've kind of slimmed down on now that I have two small children. So just formulating it as a tour, like a summer tour, just letting people know like the places where I will be, so they can just be aware of that in my schedule. So just treating it, going back to music and treating it like it was a musician that was on tour.
We'll return to Cedric Mitchell in just a moment. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by Hot Glass Color and Supply, committed to supporting glass art and glass artists. The company is thrilled to be amplifying the voices of amazing artists like Cedric Mitchell. Hot Glass Color and Supply was started by glassblowers for glassblowers. They are your go-to for color, clear, and tools in COE 96 and COE 33. Specializing in Kugler color and clear, a wide range of Boro colors, and the best selection of glass-making tools anywhere. All available to shop in person or order online at hotglasscolor.com. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by Pittsburgh Glass Center. Celebrating 25 years in 2026, Pittsburgh Glass Center is still glowing and growing. The nonprofit school, gallery, and studio continue to cultivate an inclusive and welcoming environment that encourages everyone, from the casually curious to the master artist, to learn, create, and be inspired by glass. Learn more at pittsburghglasscenter.org. This episode is sponsored by the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass. AACG is a leading resource for glass collectors, artists, gallerists, museum personnel, educators, and others on all things related to glass art. Its mission? To further the development and appreciation of art made from glass. It also provides a place for the glass community to have robust conversation around glass art through its weekly virtual programs and provides grants and scholarships. Membership gives glass lovers access to many members-only benefits. For more information and to become a member of AACG, go to aacgglass.org. And now, we return to Cedric Mitchell. You also did a month-long residency at the Corning Museum of Glass, this time working with Tobias Moll. Tell us about that.
Oh, that was super fun. So, that was a long one, and that really just helped me define like my style and my design language, which I call the modern funk aesthetic. Which within that, I probably made 7 pieces that I was just really proud of out of probably hundreds. And then exploring things, I did my first Marini roll up there, working next to Tobias, exploring the granulare technique, which Dick Marcus used to use a lot. So that was something that I used as a discovery moment to like go through all the things that I've never really gotten to do, like cane work, Marini, pattern. So just going through a checklist of things and trying things out to discover more of myself and my design language. And then working alongside someone like Tobias was just incredible, vast resource and knowledge, and just someone with a great amount of skill who also comes from that Lino tree. So that was just a powerful moment to be able to be in the presence of someone who's so great.
Talk about the role of Incalmo in your work.
Yeah, I mean, that started off, I'm a huge fan of like Incalmos and, making clean forms with Incalmo. And, now it's become a thing. I don't even know if you can call it Incalmo anymore, but just connecting parts together, and stacking them, to make my sculptural works, and some some functional and design pieces as well. Um, I just like the color blocking technique that comes with Encomo and how you can put those together and create a design language. And I'm also a huge fan of Boyd. So spent a lot of time watching Boyd on YouTube and just admiring his work and the way he puts together his colors and the color compositions as well. So, just taking, a lot of my favorites and combining them together, just stealing like an artist.
You said your show at Vetri featured the best work you ever made. What year was that, and what pieces were featured in that show?
So that was right after my residency, 30-day residency at Corning. So that was the work that I made in that 30-day residency at Corning. So, and then one of those pieces was actually acquired by the Chrysler Museum of Glass. So that was a huge moment there, which they acquired the static motion piece that I produced. So it was that one, Virtuoso, Dynamicism, Shared Solitude. And, some of those pieces have grown into other forms of design to where, they've rolled over into furniture. So like the Shared Solitude piece inspired some side tables and chairs that I've been working on. So it was a huge moment for me within glass and, defining what I would call the modern funk aesthetic. So it's always something that I've said, and the work is inspired by Editorial Sotsas and the Memphis Design Group. But I felt like after that, I needed to kind of define what I would call my design language, which is the modern funk aesthetic.
So, talk about that a bit more. Describe the modern funk aesthetic and what inspires it, and what is the Memphis Design Group?
So the Memphis Design Group was a group of designers in the late 80s led by Editorial Sotsas. And, the whole thing with the Memphis Design Group where they were going against the grain a little bit from the contemporary design world. So everything was loud and bright, and you had these patterns that would go with these bright colors as well. So you may see some bright wild colors with some black and white stripes. And they were mixing all kinds of mediums as well within glass, wood, furniture, lighting. So the thing that I really appreciate about the Memphis Design Group were they were building worlds. So they were taking empty rooms and just, filling them with objects, patterns, the walls, the paint, the wallpaper, the floor, the rug, everything. So just taking something and just shaking it up. So that's what I loved about it. And a lot of those things that came from that, I saw growing up as a kid in my culture, in the hip hop culture. So, it's basically Afro postmodern. So within that, I'm speaking into like Yo MTV Raps, or you see shows like Martin Show or In Living Color. All of those things were incorporated in those shows as I was growing up in the 90s. So that was an important part of my experience growing up as a kid. So that, shaped the way I would go about my design language. And also, like, I call it modern funk because, you had a funk movement, but then you had like James Brown, and you had like Parliament Funkadelic and like Bootsy Collins. So, and they were just wild. They were doing these wild things. So even now I'm just discovering more of myself and trying to get a little bit more wild with it. I feel like everything's been clean and having like these nice geometric shapes and beautiful color palettes. So now everything is moving towards having a little bit more funk involved in it, having a little bit more movement and character as well. So the pieces may have a off-center tilt to it, and just giving a little bit more movement and rhythm in it.
Why do you believe there will be a resurgence of decorative objects?
I really leaned more into that when I was featured in the Objects USA 2024 exhibition with Art and Company. So that was just a celebration of objects, and bringing that movement back, like where everything doesn't have to have a function. And that's something that I've been approached with every time I've made something like, what does it do? What is it, a vase? Is it this? And it's like, no, you just live with it. You know, you have a beautiful object in your home and you live with it. And you saw a resurgence of it during COVID when people were decorating their homes. And it was a new term called dopamine decor, where people were actually just filling spaces with things that brought them joy. So I think that people will lean more into that, and also the handmade and the crafted object as well. So I think we need that, especially in the glass industry, in this medium. Like, it really happened in the 90s and everything popped off then in the 90s and the early 2000s, and then we see a decline in everything. So we need a resurgence of that.
What's the Better Together residency and your experience with it?
So actually, Better Together is an event series through Crafting the Future. So Better Together started as a Black History Month event that Corey and I co-created together in LA. And what we wanted to do was have a celebration of Black culture and also the Black glassmakers who were within our industry, because at the time when I started, there was only like three well-known glass blowers, which would be like Thurman Statham, Shay Rhodes, and Deborah Moore. So we, hit up everybody that we knew within our circle, like Jason McDonald, Nate Watson, Sarah Beth, Chris Mosley, and, everybody who was on the West Coast. And we gathered everybody to come and celebrate with us. And then we also opened up a vendor market and took over the studio in LA, and had a vendor market where people could vend and sell their goods and their wares for free, and have food, celebration, music. And it was at the time, a unique time where everything was going on. We had the George Floyd thing. Everybody was on this DEI initiative thing, which we've seen kind of phase out. So everyone wanted to pick this thing up and be a part of it, and it grew into a residency thanks to Ben Wright when he was at Pilchuck. So it started as a residency, and it was a special moment for us because we took those same people who were with us at the Better Together in LA, and we included a few more people like Terry Sigler, Arthur Wilson, and Thurman Statham. And I think that was an important addition to have Thurman there with us, because, he was like the first Black glass artist at Pilchuck back in 1969. So, it was different for him to actually be around a group of people that looked like him for the first time. So sharing stories and building community there. And then it grew, Pilchuck, were on board with it, and it started out as a 5-year residency, and it grew. We just ended the 5th year of it this year, and it will move forward as a staple within programming at Pilchuck. And also, we had a unique opportunity to host a Better Together residency at Penland. When within that, initially when we wanted to do it, we wanted to take over the whole campus and have each instructor be Black, but it didn't happen. That's a lot and a large expense. So we were able to secure the glass studio and the ceramic studio, and through a grant, we were able to reward 10 artists in residence of color to have a residency in glass, and ceramics, and also received $10,000 in 2 weeks residency there. So I think that was a special moment there as well. So, and then Better Together still continues as an event series moving forward, and has been hosted in LA, New Orleans, at Urban Glass in Brooklyn, and Pittsburgh Glass Center.
One of your early inspirations in glass was 18th century glass. What interested you about that period?
When I was spending time at Cornell during my 30-day residency, I did tons of research. Um, I don't know if anyone else has walked out with two racks of books, uh, but but I did, and they were they were really interested in how I was going to get all those books out. So I just rolled one out, and then I figured that they had them delivered to me in my studio space. So I discovered, through the curators at Cornyn that, they were actually doing these stacked forms back in the 18th century, and they were able to achieve these bright colors as well. So, doing that research, I was wondering, like, if this is where some of the inspiration came from with Editori Sotsas and his work. And just seeing that for the first time is like, super powerful to see that they had this figured out already, early on, and was able to achieve these things and have that vision. So I thought that was a super powerful thing to reference.
How do you plan on merging art and design together in future works?
So I've been doing that within just some of my most recent work. Been just merging those designs within furniture. So I just released a collection with JOOPITER where I presented 4 furniture pieces, 2 chairs, a mirror, and a side table. And then also been leaning more into lighting. So I had an opportunity to do an installation at Haroon Coffee here in Leimert Park in LA. And within that, I met with the owner, Chase Johnson, and on a quick phone call, he just told me his inspiration. He loved my postmodern style, but his style was more of like a brutalist type style. And so, after the phone call, I just got on my iPad and started drawing some things up, and created some renderings. So when I went to go view the space, they showed me the space, and then I had one pendant light already ready. And he loved the drawing and the rendering of the pendant light, and it matched the aesthetic that they were going for. So that kind of like was my first lighting project, and we ended up, creating 5 pendants, one hero pendant, and then another design based off that, which we repeated twice. So we have 4 pendants around the hero. So just taking that and like merging them of how can I build out my design language from, pendant, sconce, chandelier, and it's just thinking in the terms of like world building, similar to like the Memphis Design Group, of how they took the design language and carried it forward. Like when I create something, how can this piece, this object, be transferred into a chair or a lighting object or a liquor cabinet, or something that we can just build upon. I've never wanted to be limited to just glass. That's why I call my business Cedric Mitchell Design, just to keep the door open for possibilities and ideas.
I know you're a dad now. How has parenthood impacted your artwork and the ideas you wish to express with it?
A lot. I see bright colors all the time, and there's always an element of play within my work, and then with my kids as well. So, and it's just a reminder that sometimes you have to just play a little bit, and I learned that a lot when I did the Lego project, and I had to design a public art piece inspired by children. So, working with a group of kids and hearing these crazy ideas, the imagination of a child is just infinite. So, there's a lot that you can learn from and be inspired by from a kid because there is no limit for them. And just taking that and just referring back to early childhood and incorporating that in some of the work and having fun.
Where's that Lego project located?
So it was a temporary piece, which it was for World Play Day last year, and it was in Boston.
What's coming up for you in 2026, Cedric?
So yeah, I released a 25-piece collection with JOOPITER Marketplace, which is Pharrell Williams' online platform and auction house. It's a pretty interesting platform in diversifying how people acquire art and live with art. So you can buy a Cedric Mitchell sculpture or you can buy dinosaur bones. So it's pretty diverse in the things that's on there from, fashion, collectible objects or collectible design objects. And I think it's a interesting space to be in and just not surrounded by so much glass. So I always want to go against the grain and like test different markets to see, what people are interested in and just put myself in different genres and have a different set of eyes on things as well. So with me, I've been focusing more on my lighting projects and furniture design and just doing a lot of one-off objects and small collections as well. Kind of slimming down on product and just so I can have the ability to play and keep those ideas fresh and discover more. And also collaborations, a lot of collaborations with friends of mine who are artists and, building that out with them within glass and just discovering more with them.
In October of 2026, you'll be showing work at ComplexCon, which is a large scale cultural festival that sits at the intersection of design, fashion, music, and streetwear. Why did you choose to exhibit in that context?
So ComplexCon is, I originally signed up for ComplexCon 2025, where Daniel Arsham was actually the lead creative behind it, which I really wanted to get to work in front of him and get eyes on it. But I ended up cutting my hand when I was working on the lighting project, and I had to get stitches in my hand, so I had to cancel that opportunity. But still carrying it forward this year, and I think it's a unique opportunity to lean more into the culture, my culture, Black culture at that. And I'm not trying to get people into glass, but I'm trying to just integrate it within the culture, and that way people know that it belongs here. Because I wasn't exposed to it growing up and seeing it as a viable career path, but you see more of it in our community. So within Crafting the Future and what we do there, and also with places like Project Fire in Chicago, which I love the organization there and what Pearl has done. So doing that and then expanding that to the community here in Leimert Park and the greater South LA. So using ComplexCon as a cultural moment to actually build something that could be sustainable and maybe a future home for young creatives in here to be like a nodal place for creativity.
You continue to grow your direct to consumer work with glassware collections like Kinetic Glass and Chroma Stack while building towards larger scale projects and brand collaborations. Is that diversification a conscious choice?
The diversification of it came when I got the Emerging Artist Grant from ACC, and we had a bunch of like business coaches and like just creative coaches that we would meet with, and that's how I broke down my pie, and how I wanted to just have the diversification of income of that. And then where I'm at now is actually boosting more of the teaching side of it, so more of the teaching and community building, and slimming down on the DTC, so that way I'm not really on production heavy, and then having more of the sculptural objects, the galleries, and then leaning more into like requests for proposals for public art installations now, which I've submitted one for LA here recently. So expanding my practice out on a larger scale. And, I spend a lot of time talking to Thurman about that. And, that's something he's done with his career, with being able to expand in all these different areas, whether it be teaching, his gallery practice, and public art installations as well. So, and it's always been about community. So like building community and something that could have longevity within the community as well. So that's the main thing for me is, building something that lasts and having like a legacy as well.
As you mentioned earlier, there were only 3 famous Black artists working with glass listed on Google when you started. Talk about your drive to change that.
Yeah, that was my defining moment, of seeing that and realizing that this needs to change. So being and becoming the change, and then also aligning with someone like my friend Corey Pemberton to actually help exercise that vision and get it out. I think that has been important to actually let people know and to see. And, I'm just grateful for my career and the collaborations that I've actually been able to participate with national brands to bring along that recognition so they can see it on the world stage. To bring light to what I do and what we do within that and expanding that vision for the community.
Thanks for tuning in to Talking Out Your Glass. Many thanks to our sponsors, His Glassworks Incorporated, Wet Dog Glass, the Chrysler Museum of Glass Perry Glass Studio, Hot Glass Color and Supply, Pittsburgh Glass Center, and the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass. To find out more about this podcast, go to talkingoutyourglass.com, where you'll find all 11 seasons of the show, artist images, and more. To help continue the documentation of glass and glass artists, click on Donate and make a donation to the show. Until next time, stay glassy.